Welcome to another exciting episode of What the FinTech, recorded live from the vibrant heart of Bangkok at Money2020 Asia. Today we have an incredible guest, Stefanie Koh from TerraPay. So let's get started and unlock the secret of secreting of our digital future. Hi Stefanie, how are you today?
Hi, I'm well. Thanks for having me, Medhy.
It's a real pleasure to have you. It was great to get a couple of calls with you before this interview and know you. And I'm very impressed about your background. So maybe we can start with the easiest question I ask to everyone here. Could you introduce yourself? Who are you? What have you studied before? What did you do before going to TerraPay? And what is your current position here?
Right. So I'm Stefanie. I have been in TerraPay for 15 months. So as a FinTechie, I'm quite a baby. Total elapsed time is only maybe 5 years. But TerraPay is not my first FinTech. I've always been in the banks, JP Morgan, Citi, DBS, and in the schemes as well. So Visa and MasterCard. I've held different roles, solution sales sometimes, and product mainly, right? So when I first joined TerraPay, my role was in market development for Asia Pacific payments. But then, there has been an opportunity, and I just newly took over product development and commercialization globally for the company. It's been very exciting.
Very interesting. Can I ask you, before we go into TerraPay and your mission right now, what were the key experience or challenges that shape your career and make all those decisions happen and going now to TerraPay?
Yeah. So it's a bit cliche, as you may have heard it from others before. It's really not just about the company, but the manager and the team that you feel that you can align your values and, go to, I wouldn't say battle in a bad way, but, go and solve problems together, uncover new things together. That really has made my career decisions most of the time, right? So it's a very important journey and exploration during the interview process. I take it very seriously, right? So it's not just about the role, but that one little extra thing that I always look out for is whether or not I have a certain rapport, right, with the company and what it stands for, right? So for me, from a personal perspective, I like to coach newcomers to the workforce, right? Not necessarily new people who join a firm that I'm in, but then, people who may have graduated only for less than 2 years. So I feel that they're a little bit raw and like to help them. The other topic that I always am enthusiastic about is about family planning, because I myself went through challenging experience of conceiving. And so, these are topics that people don't really talk about. And I find that it is important to also realize what that company stands for before I make a decision to join the company. So if that company has that, thinking to embrace and support their employees, whether is it in family planning or other aspects like this, I find that it is a very important aspect for when I consider whether I join a company.
Health and mental health is something like we don't speak about in the companies and founders as well, especially on FinTech and startups. Thank you for sharing this with us. Okay, TerraPay is very famous. We can see the logo everywhere in the world. But can you maybe explain what you are doing exactly there? What is the mission of TerraPay in the global payment ecosystem, and how you're working with the teams toward, achieving it?
Right. So the vision of TerraPay is to really simplify global money movement, right? So instant, reliable, transparent, with a whole commitment to compliance. Today, we can send funds to 144 countries into 7.5 billion accounts and 2.5 billion wallets. The first transaction was $13 sent by a worker in Dubai, sending money home to Tanzania, $13, right? But today we have expanded so much, and we continue to drive our efforts towards providing seamless payments into accounts and wallets.
Thank you very much for the introduction of TerraPay and explaining to everyone here what you are doing exactly. So maybe we can delve together into some of the innovation projects that TerraPay has developed under your leadership.
Sure. So I can't take credit for anything that has happened so far, because really it's the team. So because as I was explaining, I'm in the role pretty new, about 2 months. So all the way before this, right, there's a whole committed bunch of folks, right, who really believe in enabling money movement in a seamless way, as I explained before, right? Instant, reliable, transparent, and compliant. So the company, as we continue to do that, I feel that I've been privileged to be in the role now to really enable what has been built so far, although we are still continuing to build new things as well. So what do I mean by enablement? I believe that the product organization's role is to help a company shorten the time to revenue, shorten the time to resolving problems, shorten the time to make sure that the regulators or our colleagues who deal with the regulators understand how, whether we are leveraging technology, depending on enhancement of processes or other tools that we are leveraging, to really give them the comfort, right, that we are doing what we say we do, right? And so on that note, I feel like, my team's role now is to really make sure that whatever we felt that, or the team has built, whatever we felt that will be able to give the kind of benefit that we expect, right, is really fully optimized. So we want to go deeper into workflows and process flows before we introduce the idea of payments, right? So as we work with partners to enable the money movement globally, we want to know, right, are there more use cases that we want to go into? Why do the consumers or the businesses want to get into those particular use cases? We work with our partners to enable them, but for me, it's more about really understanding and peeling the onion, right, on how our products and solutions will be able to support the needs and the problems that we can solve for.
You give a strong image of peeling the onions here.
I'm a foodie, so it always comes down to analogies of...
and what are some of the inspiration behind this innovation and the impact they have on customers? I think when we proposed this question as well, you spoke about the DNA of the company and doing more and better, or more is better.
Yeah.
Could you explain a bit more of this, please?
Yeah. So I think a lot of our partners and the countries, right, where we really have a strong footprint in, is that most of the consumers are underbanked, right? So wallets become a very important part of our solution, right? So the continuous innovation, the continuous enabling, the continuous really trying to find out what other use cases we can support on the interoperability of wallet money movement is very important, right? So I think on that note, we drive our efforts towards that. So for me, wallets, right, is more is better, and better is more as well. So there's no, we want to enable more wallets all across in different countries.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. When we proposed this interview as well, we spoke about the industry challenge that you face, or the company face. Maybe we can start first with the regulatory landscape.
Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead if you want.
So from my perspective, right, regulators set up rules and policies because there's a certain issue that they are concerned about. And where they hear about the concern is from the tenets of the economy, right, within themselves, as well as most commonly their neighbors first, and then the countries that they do more trades with, right? So in anticipating regulatory challenges, I would say that a few things are always common, right? So understanding the flow, what is the purpose of the flow, what are some of the capabilities, or what are some of the data points that we can identify the person or identify the purpose of the flow. So these are pretty common. But then I think another approach is really to engage with chambers of commerce, trade associations, the Ministry of Trades itself in each of the different countries, in order to really find out what are the challenges that they face from an economy perspective, right? Or is country A and country B having a free trade zone or special economic zone that they may require more money movement? So on that note, this is a big focus for us. So it's no longer just about the rules. That is a given, right? That is a given. And we have our MLROs in the different countries and, the due diligence team, the compliance team, and all of them, which deals with the day-to-day transaction monitoring stuff. But then we also have now a government affairs component where we have a new colleague, Marco, Bodini, who is an EVP who just joined us recently, to really drive that charge. So we have started to, think about how we would approach from that perspective. So in short, right, really is to understand the needs of the economy, the needs of the people, the businesses, and how they want to do flows or trade cross-border, in order to then we understand the thinking behind what the regulators are looking for when they actually want to set up a certain rule or policy.
So this comes to my next question. How do you anticipate any regulatory change? And how flexible are you in your strategy to adapt to this new change?
Okay, so we think about it from a technology perspective as well as the processes, right? So we want to be as flexible as possible. So the policy changes, our approach is not then dependent or be too encumbered with the policy changes. I think certainly I'm not the expert in anticipating regulatory changes, but I think that whole concept of how I was talking about advocacy is very important, and really working with the business groups, right, or the different associations and groups that deals with the consumer that needs these support.
Thank you very much. It's very clear. I think everything you explained since the beginning of this interview is very clear. We have like the beginning, the development, and the conclusion. So it's quite easy to understand the full picture. So maybe I can ask you other questions about mostly about the philosophy and the leadership of the company.
Yeah.
How has your leadership style evolved with TerraPay, and what principle guides, I will say, guides your decision-making process?
Okay. So as I was sharing earlier about my career decision-making process in the past, right, it's always about the people that you work with, right, and your managers that support you. So over time, I have been true to myself to know what are the traits I like and what are the traits that I don't like, and therefore I avoid, right? I try to be very conscious about how I don't want to be a certain type of manager. I want to be more of a certain type of manager. So I think my leadership style, if I actually try to find out what to label it, in some website it does call it like the pace setting coach. So that's what I like to call myself. So definitely I'm more of a coach, which I feel that I'm a mother hen type of person from a personality perspective. So my team is very strong. They can pretty much do what they need to do with regards to the goals, right? But then there are some times that I find that either we overthink things or we think too fast of something, and there has to be a balance. So my job, right, is to really sit down with them to say, strike a balance and say we don't want to be thinking too much before we experiment, whether we want to go live with a certain product or how to go out with something. Like, can we experiment with a smaller group type of a scenario? But at the same time, I don't want us to be just building products because we can. Because then the question is going to be, who is going to be using it? Are we really solving a problem, or are we just feeding a desire, right? So these are some of the things that I think about when I work with my team. But the pace setting part is something I'm very conscious about. Pace setting really describes a manager who wants to set a good example. So I always try to lead by example, but at the same time, because I'm pretty an intense person, right? Like I said, because of the peeling onion component, I like to go into the details and all that. So I have to hold myself back sometimes to think I need to let my team think about things on their own as well, right? So it is a more scalable approach to making sure that the organizations has the best brains, the best approaches, and so on with regards to product development and commercialization. So on that piece, it is a balance. Actually, for me, throughout my career, whether it's in TerraPay or before, right, it is always about striking a balance of overthinking versus thinking too little and planning too little.
Okay, it's an interesting philosophy. I like it. I think you share already enough on this. I don't want to go to some specific here.
Yep.
But interesting. your role with TerraPay and what you are doing with TerraPay, it's like something you have joined like 15 months ago, right? So far, how was your journey there, and what excites you every day when you wake up in the morning or you work with the office? Yeah, it's a bit more personal as a question.
Okay, so I've only been in this product development and commercialization role for the last 2 months.
Okay.
Right, and I would say that what keeps me going is that the organization really gives an opportunity for you to try. Right, there are very specific things that and goals that we want to achieve. There are a lot of new things that are coming up, which I'll say watch this space, right? And then we are making our announcements and so on. But what drives me is the opportunity to really go forward, right? So it's not okay for us to not do. For us, it's okay to fail, right? But you have to know why you're failing, right? So again, it's that balance. But that really drives me to work all day. I do want to kind of highlight that so we have a founder, right? Amba, he is very much the guide, right? So my direct line is Ani, and Ani is the chief business officer. He's the explorer. So he's the one that's encouraging us to go forth, right? And be thinking about what we need to be doing. And he does drive the direction as well. So that part is very, very, how do I say, empowering. So we are empowered to make the decisions. If we fail, we fail. We have to understand and then we move on. Right? So I think these are some of the things that really keep me going at TerraPay. And of course, the team. Right? So they're pretty new to me, a couple of them. They've been in TerraPay longer than I have been, right? But because of the change, then, we're trying to get to know each other as well, and people are adaptable. So I think that's the interesting part.
Yeah, definitely. We spoke about the vision. We spoke about the innovation solutions. We spoke about like the regulatory landscape, the philosophy. Is there any specific points we didn't touch here? Maybe on the product, maybe on the platforms that you'd like to cover a bit more here on this podcast?
Yeah, I think there's a component where TerraPay believes in really developing our own technology. So we do a lot of that. Of course, we do work with partners and third-party providers, right? But a lot of it is driven by the COO, where he is the architect, right? And because the level of service is very important to us, so whatever that is very core to our business, we need to have some control on the tech, on the processes, and so on. While we have been enabling money movement on the remittance side, we have new use cases, right? And the approach is the same. We're not close to working with partners at all. They are the experts, right, in many of their domain. But a lot of it is that we want to be at the core of thinking of how we would, be interacting with our stakeholders, as in the clients, the partners, the regulators, and so on, right? So weaving the tech, weaving how we will leverage the best of our partners is pretty important.
I just would like to come back a bit more on this. Since the beginning of the interview, you mentioned about the first customer we send the money from Dubai to Tanzania.
Yeah.
And because you are at Money2020, where we make the money, how do you work with all those partners together?
Yeah. So TerraPay is licensed and have regulatory approvals in 31 markets, right? So, but we do send money to 144.
Okay.
Right? So that one is the P2P or C2C. And on that note, we work with a lot of the licensed financial institutions, non-bank and banks, right, in order to facilitate the final flow, right, from origination as well as termination. So on that note, that has been the way, and we do heavy due diligence on their status to be able to provide that service, whether it's origination or termination. I think on that part, we will continue to do that, right? We will continue to drive more markets into our network, but we are also applying for license. Like recently, we have got granted a license from the MAS for the Singapore. Thank you. For the Singapore Major Payment Institution, which allows us to really support our partners better, right? Whether is it in e-money issuance, account issuance, domestic money transfers, cross-border money transfers, as well as acquiring, right? So there are different approaches that we are taking for different markets, a lot driven by demand, right? Driven by where we believe that we can take our services as well. So not sure if I answered the question, but
it's good. It's just me who want to have like a bit more understanding on the product and the platform.
Yep.
I think we have like 5 minutes left in this interview, so maybe I would like to come back to one of the points you mentioned as well earlier as well about being a kind of a mentor or coach for your teams. I think this is kind of inspiring, especially for fintech innovators. Sorry. So what kind of advice can you give to someone looking to make a mark in the fintech industry?
So this one is really speaking from personal experience, right? So it really depends on where you come from. I can only speak from my own experience coming from the enterprise to fintech, right? So in the enterprise, you are very structured, right? You are a piece of a big jigsaw puzzle. You are a very important tool or component in a big machinery, okay? And when you come to a fintech, you are sometimes the tool itself. You're not a component in the tool. So when you come from so much structure and suddenly you are asked to go and experiment and test things out, it's okay to fail, there's some worry there. There's a bit of a concern, right? Because you don't know what is defined by failure and so on. But I would encourage the people who are coming from that space to come into fintech that, number one, don't keep comparing how it was before, right? There's different types of organization, and fintech is another type of organization. Be flexible. But I also think that just because, so if you come from the enterprise space, and if you find yourself trying to shake off that conundrum and you get into it too hurriedly in the fintech, that's also not correct. Because the fintech has kind of asked you and invited you or given you the opportunity to join them for the whole journey of innovation and disruption, is because they value your experiences and some of the deep dive things that you have done before when you were a tool in a big, when you're a component in a big tool, right? So therefore, I think that whole keeping an open mind, having a growth mindset, and really have that balance is important. That is easier said than done, because sometimes, in a meeting, I start to think a lot, right, on too deep, right? And then sometimes I have to tell myself to consciously get out of that and move to the next topic, because we need to move fast, and fintechs are lean.
And do you see some common pitfalls that they should avoid?
Yeah, that whole struggle to be, I guess it's the same kind of two sides of the same coin, right? That whole pitfall is, don't be afraid, like, just be yourself. So if you keep thinking about how somebody would see you, like, oh, you've come from the traditional, so whatever you say must be traditional kind of a thing, don't worry about that. Bring your experiences to the table, right? Be adaptable, and if it's not accepted, move on, right? If your views are, they take 30% of it, whether they take 100% of it or 0% of it, move on and then have another conversation about a different approach and so on. Just share your experiences openly. That whole open communication is extremely important. Extremely, extremely important. But always explain why, right? So sometimes I think maybe a pitfall or maybe more adjustment somebody has to make is, instead of, when I was in another organization before kind of an approach, it's let me explain to you how I've seen it work, right? So if you don't come up with that, then people can't see the why you are expressing what you're expressing and the way that you're expressing your ideas or your concerns and so on.
I like how you articulate all those things. Very interesting. We should do another episode later on the career advice and mentorship.
Anytime.
We are almost at the end of this interview, so maybe I can ask you a couple of last questions. For those interested to learn more about TerraPay or reaching out to you, what are the best channels?
Oh, LinkedIn for sure, right? So I can't say I'm very, very active, but I make sure that I, put out some posts once in a while. I think from a TerraPay perspective with our new website, Our founder and co-founders are all, and our presidents are all featured there as well. I think they've been labeled the right. It's fantastic. Our marketing team has labeled them like Amba is the guide, Ani is the explorer, Ram, our COO, is the architect, as examples, right? So do visit us at our website. We are constantly updating, the new things that we are doing, the new markets that we're going into, and the new partners that we are signing up with as well.
For the people listening to us, this interview was recorded here at Money2020, but we have also people listening to us here live outside. Oh. If they want to meet you, they can go at your booth, right?
That's right. TerraPay is at booth 4004. It's right. You can see us there because our name is on.
Yeah, the logo is.
Yeah, that's right. It's visible. There. It's visible. We have got two of our co-founders here. Ani, the Chief Business Officer, Ram, who is our COO, Ruben, who newly joined us as president, previously from Visa, is also here with us at this event. So come and talk to us.
Definitely. Feel free to go and speak with them. Okay, Stefanie, I think it's all for me. We answered most of the questions I've prepared and also add during this interview. So Thank you very much for your sharings. It was a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you, Medhy.
Thank you.